Startling. New York exploded when the Filipino wonder finally stopped her winless skid against her close friend, Alex Eala, who had just upset Iva Jovic at the Stars of the Open show inside Arthur Ashe Stadium. The 21-year-old Filipino had previously lost to Jovic twice this year, but Eala eventually turned things around on the largest tennis platform. This was not how many anticipated the contest would conclude. Eala, who had a 0-2 head-to-head record and had lost 2 straight sets in the French Open in Queen's Club, decided to get retribution on the most promising stage of them all. The atmosphere at Arthur Ashe Stadium was electrifying as soon as Alex Eala took the court. The biggest tennis stadium in the world was packed with over 23,000 spectators eager to watch some of the sport's most talented young players. At the heart of the spectacle were 2 close friends who were once again forced to put their friendship aside in order to compete. Iva Jovic, an 18-year-old American phenom ranked 14th in the world who had already defeated Isla twice in 2026, was on the other side. One of the highlights of US Open Fan Week and one of the most eagerly awaited exhibits on the tennis calendar, the Stars of the Open, sponsored by Chase, was back for a 4th year in a row. João Fonseca, a 19-year-old Brazilian who became the youngest Brazilian champion on the ATP Tour in the Open era, Lerner TN, a 20-year-old American who achieved a career-high ranking of number 18, Amanda Anisimova, Alex Michelsen, Marta Kostuk, and Arthur Fils were among the many young talented players on the lineup. However, one matchup, Eala versus Jovic, had everyone talking despite the amazing lineup. The US Open organizers announced that tickets would start at just $30, with a portion of the proceeds going to the USTA Foundation, which supports youth tennis and education programs in under-resourced communities. Alexandra Eala, João Fonseca, Iva Jovic, and Lerner TN were among the most exciting young tennis stars. Jovic and Eala also had a long history together. When Eala won the girls' singles championship at the 2022 US Open and teamed up with Maya Andrea to defeat Jovic and Shannon Lamb in the initial round of the girls' doubles event, the 2 rising stars first came into contact. Later, Jovic recalled that meeting and joked, "We got killed." She also recalled that it was the first time she had met Eala and that Eala had been a really pleasant person ever since. However, their camaraderie vanished as soon as they took the court. The fact that Jovic had already defeated Eala twice in 2026 added to the intrigue of their match at Arthur Ashe Stadium. But this time, Eala was determined to alter the narrative, and she eventually had her chance in front of a boisterous New York audience. In 2026, Alex Eala and Iva Jovic's rivalry had already resulted in 2 noteworthy matches: Jovic's victory over Eala at the French Open in May and the Queen's Club Championships in June. The American was nearly perfect in London, striking 26 winners and making only 9 unintentional mistakes in a commanding 6-2, 6-2 victory that ended Eala's 5-match winning run on grass. However, there was never animosity between the 2 rising stars, even though their matches were competitive. Following their Queen's Club meeting, Jovic clarified that she did not find it particularly challenging to play a friend, stating that there was no animosity and that they had already reconciled after leaving the court. Eala demonstrated the same respect and sportsmanship, and following their match at the French Open, Jovic even praised Eala on social media and wished there had been 2 victors. But now, in front of almost 23,000 spectators inside Arthur Ashe Stadium, the 2 pals were ready once more, this time under the brightest lights possible. There was no official tournament match in the Stars of the Open. There were no repercussions for the US Open draw and no ranking points at risk. It was an exhibition designed to amuse spectators and promote a worthy cause. For Eala, however, the significance was far more profound. This was her chance to prove that she could fight with one of the world's rising talents, to finally defeat a buddy who had previously defeated her twice in 2026, and to make a statement prior to the start of the US Open main event. Among the upcoming generation of tennis players, their amicable rivalry swiftly emerged as one of the most intriguing narratives. Outside of the court, they actually respected one another, encouraged one another to get better, and were both rising to the top of the women's game. Jovic had even stated that she hoped their rankings would climb so they would wind up on opposite sides of the draw and possibly face each other in the semifinals or final, rather than in the first round of major tournaments. But they had one more chapter to write in New York before that dream could come true. The audience realized they were seeing more than just an exhibition as Eala and Jovic entered Arthur Ashe Stadium. It was an additional chapter in the rivalry between 2 of the most talented teenage tennis players. Jovic held a 2-0 head-to-head advantage going into the match, and both wins had left Eala looking for answers. Jovic, seeded 17th at Roland Garros, defeated Eala 6-4, 6-2 in the opening round of their maiden encounter at the French Open in May 2026. The Filipino celebrity was devastated by the loss, yet she handled it with incredible maturity. Eala stated she learned a lot from the battle and was inspired to keep working and developing. She expressed her admiration for Jovic even in loss, referring to her as a close friend and acknowledging that the most difficult aspect was realizing that one of them had to return home while the other made progress. Eala faced a challenge because Jovic was a hard competitor and a superb tennis player, not just because she was her buddy. Jovic was well aware of that dynamic, which is exactly what made their subsequent encounter at Arthur Ashe Stadium so captivating. Both players would be determined to show who could dominate the situation once the game started, but their relationship would endure. After their match at the French Open, Jovic remarked, "Alex is a great player, one of the toughest first-round opponents I could have gotten, especially as a seed. However, I persevered when necessary and was pleased to finish it quickly." The two young celebrities' bond was stronger than ever in spite of the loss. Later, Jovic shared a picture on Instagram with the description, "One of those days I wish there could be two winners." Eala's response, "No one I'd rather share the court with," wonderfully encapsulated their connection. "I adore you, girl." When they met again in June 2026 at the Queen's Club Championships, Jovic once again proved to be a formidable opponent, defeating Eala 6-2 in just 76 minutes. Eala's 5-match winning streak on grass was ended by the victory, and she was once again left wondering how to defeat one of her best friends. From the start, Jovic set the pace, quickly taking a 3-1 lead and winning the first set with ease. The American persisted in applying pressure in the second, using accurate, forceful shots to thwart Eala's attempts to fight her way back. The story was revealed by the numbers. Jovic received a near-perfect 9 for forehand quality. 5 out of 10, well above the 6-draw average. 5, and missed just 6 forehands in total. She also won an amazing 81% of her first serve points, which made it very challenging for Eala to create opportunities. Afterward, Jovic acknowledged that playing doubles with Eala was more enjoyable than being across the net from her. He expressed regret that they had to meet in the early rounds but expressed hope that they would eventually compete in the finals. She also stressed how much Eala meant to her as a friend, but the rivalry had turned into a puzzle that she desperately wanted to solve. Eala had already defeated Olympic champions, Grand Slam champions, and even a world number 3 in a major final, demonstrating that she could compete with anyone when she was at her best. She now got a second chance to solve the Jovic riddle, and the stage could not have been more expansive. More than 23,000 yelling spectators were eager to see the two teenage stars reunite during the Stars of the Open showcase inside Arthur Ashe Stadium. The 0-2 head-to-head record symbolized everything that had previously occurred, but Eala used it as motivation rather than a burden. Chase's Stars of the Open was more than just a show. It had evolved into a celebration of tennis's next generation, bringing together some of the sport's most gifted young players on the world's largest platform. Eala saw it as another chance to show everyone why she had emerged as one of the tour's most captivating performers. The 23,000-seat Arthur Ashe Stadium was jam-packed, and the atmosphere was electrifying. In its 4th year in a row, the Open stars have gathered to represent the United States. 4 of the most promising young stars, Alexandra Eala, Joao Fonseca, Iva Jovic, and Lerner Tien, will be the main attractions during S Open Fan Week. Before turning 22, each had already achieved significant milestones and drawn the interest of tennis fans worldwide. However, the event was about more than just performing, it was also about giving back. As the lights came up inside Arthur Ashe Stadium, everyone knew that the stage was set for Eala to write a completely different ending to her story with Jovic. A portion of the ticket proceeds went to the USTA Foundation, the national charitable arm of the United States Tennis Association. The foundation supports the National Junior Tennis and Learning, or NJTL Network, a nationwide group of more than 270 organizations that use tennis as a pathway to help young people from under-resourced communities succeed both on and off the court. The NJTL Network gives over 233,000 young people the chance to gain self-assurance, self-discipline, and the skills necessary to create prosperous futures through tennis, academic help, and mentorship programs. The charity exhibition was a wonderful fit for Alex Eala, who has continuously exploited her expanding platform to give back. Joao Fonseca, the 19-year-old Brazilian sensation who became the youngest Brazilian champion on the ATP Tour in the Open era, Lerner Tien, the 20-year-old American who had risen to a career-high number 18 ranking and already accumulated several historic, youngest victories, and Iva Jovic, the 18-year-old who became the youngest player inside the WTA Top 20 and one of the top American women, were among the lineup. All eyes were on one clash, though, despite the star-studded lineup, Eala versus her close friend Jovic. Since Eala won the girls' singles championship at the 2022 US Open, the two had been acquainted, and their friendship had only deepened over time. They had dinners with other players, traveled the world for competitions, discovered new cities together, and developed a sincere relationship that went well beyond tennis. However, camaraderie had to give way once they were on the court. Eala had already lost against Jovic twice in 2026, once at Queen's Club and once at the French Open, but the exhibition at Arthur Ashe Stadium gave Eala another chance to turn things around. New York was prepared for something extraordinary as the game eventually got underway. The 23,000-seat Arthur Ashe Stadium exploded in cheers as soon as Alex Eala took the court. This night seemed different, yet it was the same intense atmosphere that had accompanied her through the crowded stands in Toronto and the Lindner Family Tennis Center in Cincinnati. The player on the other side of the net this time wasn't merely a rival. She had already solved Eala twice and was a good friend. But it was evident from away that Eala had arrived with an entirely different perspective. The straight-set losses at Roland Garros and Queen's Club remained, as did the 0-2 head-to-head record. However, Eala turned those setbacks into inspiration rather than letting them consume her. She maneuvered Jovic around the court, attacked from the baseline, took charge of rallies early, and refused to allow the American easy opportunities. After appearing so calm throughout their earlier encounters, Jovic suddenly showed signs of weakness and started making unusual mistakes. Eala, on the other hand, moved quickly, chose her shots accurately, and appeared to gain confidence with each rally. For the first time in their battle, the Filipino stars had the upper hand. The audience inside Arthur Ashe Stadium sensed that something had changed as the opening set swiftly became a message. The second set followed the same pattern, and when the final point was finally played, the scoreboard displayed the outcome Eala had been chasing for months: sweet revenge. Arthur Ashe Stadium erupted as the crowd celebrated the breakthrough, with Filipino fans waving Philippine flags and chanting Eala's name throughout the arena. However, this victory was far more than an exhibition result. It was a declaration. Eala had a 0-2 record going into the match against Jovic, having lost 2 straight sets and spent months trying to figure out how to overcome one of her best friends and the most formidable young opponents. She had now discovered the answers on one of the biggest tennis stages. This raises the subject that the tennis community is currently debating following Eala's incredible triumph at the Stars of the Open. How much momentum will the Filipina superstar bring to the biggest tournament of the summer, and what does her victory really imply for her US Open campaign? The answer is much more positive than the results of the show alone might indicate. Although the Stars of the Open had no official prize money, no ranking points, and no effect on the WTA record books, Eala could benefit greatly from the site psychology. This marked a turning point, an increase in self-assurance, and a declaration that she had at last figured out the riddle that Jovic had stood for. The triumph ended a 2-continent, 2-surface losing streak of 0-2. Jovic defeated Eala 6-4, 6-2 in the French Open in May.